my friends, I'm going to say something that I think may in 2025 be controversial. I know it's gotten a little bit of a bad rap, but I do think, and I am someone who grew up with it, I do think that social media is a net positive. Not always, not in all contexts, but I think that even though it has currently been perhaps co-opted by the worst, most immoral, unethical, darkest parts of humanity, I do think that has been a net positive. Anything that brings about this ability to stay connected with people who you might not have seen in months or years is a good thing. People who exist in other chapters of your lives, chapters you've already turned the pages but want to go back and remember. I'm going to divert a little bit from my normal routine tonight. Typically at this point in the service, I talk about the Torah portion. And this week we read Parashat Teitzei, which means going out to war. But actually this week I want to talk a little bit about the Haftarah. For those of you who are unfamiliar, I'm going to introduce you just a little bit. Millennia ago, rabbis chose excerpts from the prophets and from the writings that agree with the week's Torah portion, either thematically or in topic, or sometimes in ways that I can't tell, but I'm sure that they had really good reasons. And they assign it to that parsha. And you read it afterwards. And this week, the Haftarah comes from the book of Isaiah. And it's short. It is only 10 verses long. So good job to anyone who has a bar bat mitzvah this week. That's a good one, yeah? And like most of the book of Isaiah, this is poetry. It's certainly not the kind of prose that we've been reading since the beginning of the book of Vayikra. That is, and he begat who, and he begat him, and measurements. No, this is more poetry than prose. It is florid phrases rather than direct sentences. And what Isaiah, this is probably, I guess, second Isaiah in this context, is talking about is the relationship between God and the people. And I think we can all agree that relationships make life worthwhile, but they are not always easy. Sometimes they require effort. Sometimes they require work. Sometimes you are angry at someone you love. Sometimes you have feelings. You need to take space. There's good times. There's bad times. And Isaiah is talking about the way God has felt about the Israelite people. We have read over and over again since Bereshit last year, and we'll start again with Bereshit in about, 6 weeks, that the Israelites, despite having seen manifest evidence of God's ability, still says, we were better off in Egypt. Or, I don't really believe we're ever going to get to the promised land. And then God says, well, okay, I'm going to kill 1,000 of you, which may seem extreme, but that's what God says. But Isaiah tells us that this relationship is ebbing and flowing. It is not severed. It is not ending. God says, for a little while I forsook you, but with vast forsook. For a little while I forsook you, but with vast love I will bring you back. There's this idea that I think is important, that our relationships, whether it's with our spouse or our partner, or our kids, or our parents, or our friends, always has to be the same level of closeness that it always is. And that's just frankly not true. It's not possible. As we go through life, we meet a lot of people. I have lots of friends that I know that I could call them at any point, and they would pick up, and we'd be great, and we'd pick up where we left off. But where we left off might be 10 years ago. Lasting relationships ebb and flow. I was just texting earlier today, one of my college roommates who I have not seen. I guess I've seen him since my son was born, but it's probably been 7 or 8 years since I've seen him. 7 years, I guess, since I've seen him. And he and I were texting just like we were 19 years old and living in Gainesville. And it's this that brings me back to the idea I wanted to start with, which is, and I saw shaking heads and I saw expressions of perhaps disbelief, but I do think that this is one of the benefits of social media, that I can stay in touch with Doug Weber or Andrew Thomas or Dan Hardcastle or people that you don't know, but I do, and are my best friends for decades now, even if we don't live in the same city or the same state. And I think that is a beautiful thing. And I would be remiss tonight if I did not close this period by talking about the fact that it's now day 700 of the hostages. 700 is an amount of days that seems unfathomable. I was trying, as I was preparing for this, to remember what my kids were like 700 days ago, what they were like on October 7th, 2023. And I can't. They've changed so significantly. And that's just people who are, my kids who are living in suburban Orlando, Florida. The amount, bless you, the amount of suffering that has happened, it can't be expressed. And I know that we see videos, the media tends to focus on the day-to-day, which is understandable. Media needs clicks and media needs people's eyeballs on it. But I want us, as we enter this week of Shabbat and into this season of the high holidays, to remember that we cannot see hostages underground, hostages in the darkness, surrounded by horrors unimaginable. Shabbat Shalom.